morning, everybody. All right. So, once again, we have no pre-questions. So, I'm going to have to wait until I hear from you. So let me know if you have any questions. Oh, and by the way, I have the heater on here. There's a little floor heater, space heater, I guess they call it. And if it's too loud, please let me know. I'll turn it off. All right. So let me see if I can give you some news and some updates. What am I working? So right now, let me tell you what I'm working on. You know, I've told you guys before that I try to do my business according to my Christian beliefs. And one of the things that we're not supposed to do as Christians, and I know that some Christian business people don't agree with this, which I don't understand that because it's like black and white in the Bible. We're not supposed to, good morning, Mr. Walker. We're not supposed to advertise what it is that we're going to do tomorrow. That's in James 4 or something like that. I don't have the exact reference, but we're not. Basically, James says don't go around blabbing off what you're going to do tomorrow or the next day in this town or that town, because you don't know what's going to happen. And really, if you analyze what that is, and I don't mean to get preachy here, I'm just telling you why I do things the way I do. If you analyze why it's like that, if you say this is what I'm going to do tomorrow and it doesn't happen, you just lied. And lying, as much as acceptable as lying is in our current society, it's for Christians, it's still supposed to be considered to be wrong. And if you don't believe me that lying is okay in our society, just look up on Google, when is it okay to lie? Right? When is it okay to lie? Look that up and you will see that even the American Society of Psychiatric blah, 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 even they tell you that it's important to lie at certain times so you don't hurt anybody's feelings. So anyway, why am I telling you about that? Because I don't like to tell you, and I screw up sometimes and I do it, right? I'll say, we're going to release a book next week. And then the book doesn't come out. And that means that I've just lied. And as a Christian, I'm supposed to not lie. So instead of telling you that this book is coming out, that book is coming out, I'll tell you what I'm working on right now, and then we'll go from there. How's that? So right now, what I'm working on is the pioneer level tonalization studies. And you might think, hey, why do you have to be working on that? Because that's going to be the shortest of the tonalization study books, right? So why is it that I have to work on that? Well, I decided that that first book, because it is so short, I should combine. I had previously, back when we were doing modules, now we're still doing modules officially, I just haven't had time to put them up. But I changed when we moved to the new what do you call it? New, not format. The software that we use for the music store. When we moved to the new system, I decided that what I'm calling modules is different now. A module should not be as long as an ebook. So for example, when we do get the module system back going, the modules will be, instead of all the tonalization studies for one level, it's going to be just one key of the tonalization study. That way, people can buy just the one key. They don't have to buy the whole book. The book will be, but the tonalization studies books range between $14 and $21, right? They can get the one key for $3.99. Why is it $3.99? Because we cannot afford to sell anything for less than $3.99. If it's just one page, it's $3.99. If it's 10 pages, it's still $3.99, because of all the fees we have to pay. So anyway, so yes, that's important when we're coming up with the prices. So anyway, I'm on two tangents at the same time. What I'm working on right now is combining what was two modules with one of the tonalization books for the Pioneer level. Now, I know that sounds confusing. Basically, 3 projects in one book, because we want to turn it into a physical book. And because I've combined the 3, it needed more detailed instructions, which I finished writing. And then it also needs a better introduction than what I had. And since it's the first one, so Pioneer level, as you guys know, Pioneer level is my first level. Pioneer is the lowest level. So, and for a lot of people that read the book, it will be the very first tonalization studies they ever do. So it really needs to be clear. So that's why we're spending so much time on that. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? That's what I've been up to. Now, the way I structure my day. So like this week, I did some work on the book. I don't ever skip, unless, okay, like this week I had with the Blue News, I had a morning gig, so I skipped writing, composing on the morning gig. But I rarely skip composing. And since nobody's asking questions, I'll share that part of how my business works. The morning time is the most creative time. So I've not stopped writing music. What's happened is I've got this whole pool of music so how do I explain this? When I'm actually composing, that time is not part of the business time. That's creative time. That's time, actually, as I consider it part of my ministry, where I'm writing God-centered music. So I actually do that first thing in the morning. The first work I do in the morning, I sit down and I write God-centered music. And that means different things on different days, depending on what the context is. And so I'm always writing music. I'm not always publishing music. So I have a whole drawer full of unpublished, completed pieces. And that drawer, while I'm working on getting this book out, that drawer is going to continue to collect new pieces because I'm still writing new pieces. So yes, like what did I most recently finish? I'm trying to get more music in our library for the Tyro level and the Pioneer level. When I look at the play, so if you want to see a very good representation of what music we have for the different levels, If you go to the videos page on my website and go to the play-alongs, it's very clear. The one level that we have the most pieces for is this, what I call the apprentice level. And there's a bunch of those. That's the one that goes up to B flat above the staff. And so right now, for the most part, as far as trumpet pieces go, all of the trumpet pieces now have play-along videos with them. So that's a good way. And on that page, they're organized in levels. So I need a lot more. How many do I have for the Pioneer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 at the Pioneer level. Looks like about 12 on the Tyro level. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 on the player level. I think that's half of what I have for the apprentice level. And what's surprising is just how many I have at the master level. So if I haven't told you guys what the levels are, hello Javier. Javier's asking about double buzz. I'll get back to that in a second. Let me quickly tell you about my levels. So I have Pioneer level. Actually, I came up with a new level. I call it level 0, right? The hopeful level. And that's trumpet students that only have range to go up to G in the staff. And I do have materials for that. It's just not published. Pioneer level is up to C, like tuning note C. Tyro level goes up to E, fourth space E. Player level goes up to G above the staff. Apprentice is to B flat. Pro level, trumpet pro level is high C. Master level is E above high C. And the virtuoso level is the G above high C. So when you hear me talking about the levels, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so what is the reason for double buzz? So I've heard people give scientific explanations about that. At this stage in my life, when people start talking about science in the context of music, red flags start waving, right? There's a lot of times, and this is actually something that's been going on really since 1920. I looked up this book, and this is a long about way of answering your question. I'm going to grab this book real quick. So, this is called Ebby's Scientific Method. It's a trumpet book, and I looked up the history of this book, and it was talking about the article that I read was talking about how in the 1920s it had become sort of a fad to refer to things as being scientific, and that would help get the stuff sold. And from my perspective, that's going on now just the same way it was 100 years ago. It's just a little bit more subtle than that, right? They don't plaster the word scientific over the top of it. Now it's more subtle. They So a lot of people, when they start talking about science in the context of music, or even more with the trumpet stuff, a lot of times it's just to make it sound like they know what they're talking about. And what the reality is, a lot of the stuff that they talk about in a scientific manner is not, first of all, not science. Okay? First of all, it's not science. That's not how science works. Okay? You don't start off, well, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But it's usually meant to make them sound more academic. It's usually meant to make you go, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting, right? The truth is, you don't have to know why it's happening to fix it. Okay, that's the bottom line. Double buzz, I've never seen. Now, I'm not going to say that every single time this is going to be true, because that would also be not scientific, right? But double buzz is most often fixed by observing the levels of rest. The 3 levels of rest. Anytime someone comes to me with double buzz, I tell them to strictly follow the 3 levels of rest, and it goes away. We don't have to talk. So what is the scientific stuff that they try to tell you? They try to tell you that the one lip is oscillating at a different frequency from the other lip. And how are you going to prove that? And even if it was oscillating at a different frequency from the other, right? Let's say the top lip is vibrating at this frequency and the bottom lip is vibrating at that frequency. Let's say that's true. Who's to say which is cause and which is effect? Does that make sense? Just because you notice something does not mean, and by the way, we don't have the ability to notice it. When it happens to you, can you say that your top lip is vibrating from a different frequency from the bottom lip? Can you actually say that? How are you going to say that? How are you going to prove or demonstrate that one lip is vibrating at a different frequency from the other? And what's the chance that instead of 2 lips oscillating at the different speed, what's the chance that just one of the harmonics is distorted? Like having sort of a dampening effect on the string, right? All I'm saying is there's more explanations here than just, oh, one lip is vibrating at another speed from a different lip. So, generally speaking, if they start talking nonsense like that, I just don't believe them anymore. That's why whenever I mention anything, and this is just as true for psychological science and mental science and sociological science as it is for the physical sciences when it comes to music, right? People, they'll talk about neuroscience and stuff like that. And they talk about it in a way that makes them sound like they know more than you do. So you can go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. When the reality is they don't know any more than you do. So whenever I use scientific stuff in my explanations, It is for visualization purposes only. It is not to boost myself up and make it sound like I know more than I know. It is so you can see things a different way. And when you do it that way, when you approach the science stuff that way, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. The whole point is to get you to look at things a different way, right? So there are times when what I say sounds like I'm doing what they're doing. It's not the same. I do not try to prop myself up with something that just sounds more academic. Javier says, I almost never get double buzz, maybe one time a year, and yeah, it goes away the next day or the same day if I don't play. So yes, that's my thing. So, and my whole approach to the trumpet has always been, do this, what results does it produce? If it produces the wrong results, stop doing it, right? So this is like, one of the examples of this is the people who say that the lips don't touch when you play the trumpet, right? So they believe that the lips never make contact inside the mouthpiece, that they're just freely oscillating like this. And that's how, and if you do let them touch, it gives a pinched sound, a buzzy sound, right? And that's their justification. That's their justification for telling you that you should not do lip buzz. And you don't have to be super, super intelligent to see how flawed that reasoning is. Because there are literally thousands of great trumpet players out there that practice lip buzz and don't get that sound. So for them to make it sound, basically, you see how this works, right? They're using their scientific approach. They've got thousands of people, thousands of successful trumpet players standing against them, and they know it. The only thing they can do, the only thing they can come up with to make you think that the people who do lip buzz, now it just happened to a student of mine recently. I don't mind when my students go take lessons with other people. I don't mind, never did. And he didn't have a lesson with the guy. He went and I think he just hung out with the guy, but he was asking him for advice and stuff like that. And the student said, the guy said to my student, lip buzz, why are you practicing lip buzz? And I could tell from the way the student was telling me, it was the same argument that I'm talking about now. Lip buzz is bad because your lips don't touch when you're playing. And lip buzz will give you, it'll stiffen your lips and it will make you have a pinched sound. That's their argument. And they use their science to prove it, right? First of all, that science is flawed. They say that the lips never touch. Let me ask you, at A440, here's what I did to figure this out, right? I looked at what is the fastest camera speed, and how fast does A440 vibrate? That's 440 oscillations in a second. Is it second? Right? So there's no camera that can catch every stage of the lip fluctuating. So it's quite possible that if you have the fastest, and we can't even assume that the people who do these studies have the fastest equipment, and we can't even assume either in this day and age that they even know how to use this stuff in this sort of context. If it was me, well, let me tell you what's wrong with this kind of research, right? If you have a camera that is slower than the lips, let's say you're doing A440, right? And it looks like the lips are not touching. How do you know? I mean, think about it. If the lips are oscillating at 440, is it per second? I can't remember. It's got to be per second. 440 cycles per second. How long will the lips actually be touching if they do touch? How long? There's no camera, even the fastest cameras we have today cannot be counted on to catch it in that position. We're talking about such a small fragment of a second. Mathematically. So how would I do it if I was the one that was going to use this? And let me clarify before I say this. I wouldn't do the research because it doesn't matter whether the lips touch or not. What matters is, does the lip buzz give you the results you want? If it doesn't, don't do the lip buzz. None of this science stuff, the science stuff is just a distraction. The science stuff is nothing more than a distraction. It's meant to make you think that that teacher knows what he's talking about. If it was me doing that research, I would set the speed of the camera in a way that it almost matches the frequency. Now, if the camera can't go at that frequency, I would double that amount of time, right? And I would set the camera so that, let's say 440, I would set it to 220. If I can't get 220, I would set it to 110. And then you see what I'm doing here? Then I would change it just ever so slightly. So now instead of 110, let's make it 108. What's going to happen with that? You know what it's going to be? It's going to be like when you're driving down the car and you look at the other car and you see the spokes look like they're going backwards. Why do the spokes look like they're going backwards? Because your eye can't see that fast. And the position that the spokes are in, each time your eye samples, your eye works almost identically the same way as a camera does. Okay? When the spokes look like they're going backwards, it's because of the sampling that your eye is sampling the frames so that it looks like the congregate of those images makes it appear that the spokes are going backwards, and they are not going backwards. I would use the same approach to check if the lips are actually touching. I would use the same approach. I would stagger. I would get as close to the frequency on the camera as what the lips are vibrating. And then I would nudge it off just a little bit. That's how you would see every stage in the vibration. So now you're going to start seeing, just like just like the spokes on that wheel that looks like it's going backwards, you're going to now see every position that the lip travels through. That's how I would do that research. Now, I don't know if they have equipment that can do that. That's how I would do it. Just putting the camera in there willy-nilly to see the vibration of the lips without taking into account this phase shifting is not scientific. It's inaccurate. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so yes, to me, that whole scientific, it's the same stupid stuff that's going on with all of the health stuff. And I'm not even talking about COVID. There's so many things that are just not true health-wise that people, okay, so let me give you an example. All those years that they opened up someone's gut and look at all that animal fat in this person's gut. Scientific, right? Oh, animal fat in their gut. That's horrible. That's what happens when you eat meat, is you get all that animal fat in your gut. Now they know that that's animal fat is crucial. That if you don't get animal fat, you have ADD, you have all kinds of mental issues, you have Alzheimer's, dementia. But let's look at that animal fat in the gut. Oh, right? So yes, the whole science thing, and that's how you know that we live in an era right now where science is a religion. Because they don't actually approach any of this stuff scientifically. All of it is approached 100% as if it's a religion. And as far as I'm concerned, if I have to choose between that religion and Christianity, there's no choice. There's no choice there. If science makes for terrible religion. Okay? Science makes for very terrible religion. And the only reason I'm talking about that is this double buzz thing. People like to tell you stuff because they want you to think that they know what they're talking about. It's just not true. A lot of it is just flat out not true. Mr. Walker says, can a cold mouthpiece help lead to a double buzz? It was 29 degrees yesterday, and on the first service, I had let my mouthpiece get cold, and I had a couple of messed up notes. So what the cold does is it stiffens your muscles. So I can't tell, this is one of those things. So we don't even really know what the double buzz is. So if we don't know what the double buzz is, then we can't really say, you know what I mean? We can't really say if the cold makes it worse or but what we can look at is the occurrence. Like if it happens all the time, then we can say there's an association between it being cold and the double buzz coming out. I can tell you that I play terribly in the cold too. I'll never forget, I went to, my family's from Pennsylvania, and I went to Hershey one time for their Christmas. They put, in Hershey Park, they'll put up Christmas lights and Christmas displays and stuff like that. And They had a brass quartet out there, and it was cold. And I walked by. I told them, I said, I can't believe how in tune you guys are out here like this with that kind of temperature. They sounded awesome. They sounded awesome. So it turns out, if I'm not mistaken, I might be remembering this wrong, but I seem to remember that one of the trumpet players that was in that group later made contact with me and said he uses my books. How cool is that, right? You go, I'm not famous or anything. I don't want to be famous. But when you go someplace away, right, and meet total strangers, and that total stranger actually uses your stuff, that's so cool. I love it. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm going to have to quit just a tiny bit early today because I have some stuff I have to take care of today. Okay, just want to throw that out there. Gonya is asking because he caught all the non-musical part of it. He says, "How is science a religion?" Well, let's take a look, a step back and look at what is science. We talk about the scientific method. In science, the whole objective is to find the truth. We do not assume that just because, for example, if an expert says something is true, the proper response to that is to test that truth. You test it. You read, you research, you think, you reason. Once you start telling people that the experts have said something, now everybody must believe it. That is not science. That is religion. There's no difference between that and in the Middle Ages, someone thinking, just taking what the priest says without reading the Bible. There's no difference. That's religion. As a scientist, you question everything. In science, there is no consensus. When they say, well, 99% of the scientists agree, there's no such thing as that. That's not science. Science is not based on consensus. Science is based on the challenging of all status quo. You do not just accept what's told in science because someone has more degrees or someone has more experience or someone has this or that. You don't just believe it as truth. You have to understand. So this is one of the things that I've been saying. Science never asks you to believe. Science only asks you to understand. And if something does not make sense, then it's your job to look at why it doesn't make sense. That's science. If something does not make sense, you question it. You do the research, you do the reading. It becomes a religion when you just take what you're told and believe it. That's the word there, right? Believe it. If you believe it, it's a religion. If you understand it to be true because of your knowledge and your reasoning and all of that, now it's science. The irony of that is it can be religion and science at the same time. To this person over here who did not question it, and believes it's true, to that person, it's religion. To this person over here who knows it's true because he understands it, to that person, it's science. You see the difference? But religion is when you believe it. Mr. Walker says, yes, I have to tune my horn for the cold. Now, I have a policy that I do not talk about stuff outside of Trumpet unless it has a direct connection to the Trumpet or indirect. And this science stuff does have a connection more and more often. When you see a master class, they talk about the science. And I feel like it's my job to point out, first of all, how unscientific most of that stuff is. When if you go to a trumpet master class and the person presenting the master class tells you something that's supposed to be scientific, the proper response is to go research it yourself, look it up yourself, and question it, test it. Put it to the test. Practice your reasoning skills. A lot of the stuff that they say does not hold up scientifically. You know, I was watching a podcast the other day, and they were talking about the greatest sin in science. Interesting choice of words for what we're talking about. The greatest sin in science is to have a conclusion before you start the experiment. And they were lamenting how terrible it is that today, that is how most research is conducted. They have a conclusion first, and then they do the experiments to get to the conclusion. They consider this the greatest sin in science. It is the greatest wrong. It is not scientific. They said the second greatest sin is to do an experiment without a hypothesis first. There's a lot of research is done today more as an observation, he said, where they do the research and observe and present their observation as a hypothesis. That is the cart before the horse. When you do a proper experiment, you begin with the hypothesis first. And then the experiment is meant to prove or disprove the hypothesis. But in today's scientific world, they are doing precisely that. So a lot of this stuff that they're talking about that's being passed along as scientific studies today is junk science. Now, can you understand why they would have the first kind of the ultimate sin, right? Where you begin with the conclusion first, and then the person paying for the research will have 20, 30, 40 different researches, and they only publish the one that supports that conclusion. Who would do that? Someone who's trying to sell you something. Do you see that? So let's go back to the example of my research. If I was the one that was going to do the research to see, do the lips touch when we play the trumpet, or do they not touch? If I was doing the research, we would begin with the hypothesis. And then I would set up my research in a way that either disproves or proves my hypothesis. That's not what's happening today. The people who hate lip buzz, there are some vicious, outspoken people who hate lip buzz out there. They start with the conclusion, and they will tell you anything that sounds scientific that proves that they are right. That's not scientific. That's religion. And you better believe them because they're smarter than you. Right? Okay? That's how this stuff works. All right? Javier says, my brother is a guitarist. They also suffer in cold. He has to keep his hands warm, otherwise speed and mobility lose. You know, that's really, for me, more than my chops, is when I'm playing in the cold, everything slows down here. You know what I used to do? And I'm glad you guys brought it up, because you remember that the girls used to wear leg warmers? And I think this was in the 80s when I did this. I think one of my girlfriends had a leg warmers, and I took one of the leg warmers and I put it on my forearm, because the muscles for playing the trumpet are here. So I would put the leg warmer over my forearm to keep the forearm warm, so that it wouldn't affect my flexibility, and this flexibility, I mean. So, Gonya, I hope you understand what I mean by science as a religion. If any of you guys need more clarity on that, and I do not believe I've crossed the boundary. Because, yes, I understand that this also applies to a lot of other stuff that is in our society, that's societal ills right now, stuff that the activists use, just like the trumpet teachers use, to try to convince you of stuff. But that's not the context I'm talking about this in. I'm talking about it only in the context of trumpet playing. I have not, how can I word this? You know what? Let me use an example. If you want to see some examples of science that is done right in the context of trumpet playing, there's a man I believe he lives in Chicago. His name is Nick Drosdorf. And he's a physics teacher in a high school, I believe, up there. I don't know if he's still doing that, but when I first learned about him, that's what he was doing. He was a physics teacher in high school, but he was also a trumpet player. My understanding is that he played in Maynard Ferguson's band. He does this scientific demonstration stuff wonderfully. And if the science stuff interests you, I also have a book I recommend to my students. Let me grab it real quick. This book was recommended. It might have not been this exact book, but let me put it this way. This author was recommended to me, Arthur Bernard, was recommended to me by Charlie Geyer. I had one lesson with Charlie Garr back in the early 90s, mid 90s, somewhere around there. I think early 90s. Now, this is real science. This is the real deal. And this book is wonderfully written. He doesn't ask you to believe anything. He basically gives you the mathematical stuff is here. The experiments that he does are here. And when you read the book, what you have at the end of it is an understanding of the science, not a belief. You have an understanding. Now, here's one of the things that goes wrong is that people will now use their own understanding as proof that they know what they're talking about. But what happens there is the application of the science is not always. You guys see my cat on the gig bag? They like leather. So all my leather bags and all that stuff, they like to play with it. And anyway, so yes, just be careful, intellectually careful. I encourage all of you to watch those master classes and stuff like that, right? I encourage you to watch as many of those as you can. But when they start trying to make use the science to make them look like they know more than they do, just be careful. Science is not meant to make you believe stuff. Science is meant to make you think. Science is meant to make you think, not believe. Okay? This is, what happens? Hello, Raymond. Nice to see you. What happens is that by not, how am I saying this? By believing science instead of understanding it, they manipulate you into buying what they want you to buy, thinking what they want you to think, going to the university they want you to go to, buying the trumpet they want you to buy, buying the mouthpiece they want you to buy, buying the book that they want you to buy, following the trumpet ideology that they want you to follow. I had a student just to demonstrate that I'm not like that, because I try not to be like that. That student that I was telling you about, where he was hooked up with somebody who said, "Oh, you shouldn't do lip buzz." Well, the guy had stopped doing lip buzz, and he's not doing my routines anymore. If I understand him correctly, and I'm helping him apply what he is doing in a constructive manner. And to me, this is evidence, as far as I'm concerned, this is evidence that I'm not trying to just propagate an ideology. I am here to help people. Everything I do on this YouTube channel, in my teaching career, even the music that I write, it's all to help people. Every single bit of it. All of it. So if you come to me and say, "Oh, you know what? I don't think I should be doing the lip buzz anymore," If the lip buzz doesn't work for you, then you should stop doing it. But not because someone who sounded like they knew the science made you believe that. The reason you should stop doing the lip buzz is because you, with your rational mind, tried the lip buzz, tried it without lip buzz. Try it with the lip buzz, try it without lip buzz. And the results of one versus the results of the other led to a decision about the future that you want to do with your trumpet playing. It's a rational approach. And so I think, now if you guys disagree with me, I invite you to actually say something here about that. But I think if I'm telling people not to do my method, and they're paying me every week, right, to teach them trumpet, I think that's evidence that I'm not just trying to propagate my own ideology. I'm not just trying to sell my method. And in fact, if you look at it that way, there even really isn't a method. I mean, there is a method. It's just that the method is, what I call my method is not really a method per se. What my method is a series of exercises and concepts and all of this that I can run as a litmus test across the students' playing abilities, to find the weaknesses, to find the strengths, and use as basically as a diagnostic tool to help them figure out what needs to be done and what to do about it. That's what my method is. Okay, guys, I just realized what time it was. Yeah, see, Raimo says, I have never succeeded to do lip buzz and can live with it, and I can live without it. I'll live, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There's no need to do the lip buzz if you don't need the lip buzz. Right? We go with what works. And that's what makes sense. It's the guys that want you to believe stuff. That's the people you need to watch out for. If they want you to believe without using your own mind to work through that stuff, that's when it's a problem. Okay? All right, I got to go. Thank you guys for hanging out. God bless you. We'll see you next time.